Would you like to talk about diversity? Usually when I ask that question or it comes up, people are pretty polite on the outside, but on the inside, they're usually going, or even, oh. And you know what? I don't blame you, because the way we've been having the conversation about diversity, when we manage to have it at all, is often about guilt and shame, anger and blame, which isn't helpful. Now, diversity is about race, but more broadly, it's about human differences. And I'm hoping that we can start to have a more helpful conversation. And for me, it's personal. As long as I can remember, I've felt different from other people. And I grew up with and was around a lot of people who also were different and not always treated very kindly because of it. And I'll say more about that in a minute. But even as a kid, this struck me as extremely unfair, painful, but also a tremendous waste for all of us, that some people experience these barriers to showing their full brilliance in the world. So in my 35-year quest to understand why this is and try to fix it, there are 3 things that I've learned about diversity that I think can help us have a more helpful conversation. So first, I want you to ask yourselves, have you ever felt different from other people? Usually when I ask that question, pretty much every hand in the room goes up. That's the first thing that I've learned about diversity. Everyone is different, but those differences aren't treated equally. Those differences exist within a system where some are valued more than others. Some give us advantages and others give us disadvantages. So for me, growing up going to school with mostly black and brown kids, having white skin was an advantage. But going to church with mostly rich, blonde, blue-eyed kids in my thrift store clothes, my parents' old car, and my ghetto school was a disadvantage. The second thing I've learned about diversity is that everyone is biased, but biases aren't bad. Biases are part of what make us human. They're just the way that our brains work. Now, scientists estimate that there are millions of pieces of information coming at our bodies every second. But on a good day, our brains are picking up only about 40 of those. Now, those 40 are constantly and unconsciously shifting based on what our brains think is important to us. I'll give you an example. You've probably experienced this. Let's say you go out and buy a new car. Let's make it a Mini Cooper, a blue one. You ever notice how once you drive off the lot, everybody seems to be driving a Mini Cooper and most of them are blue? Yeah. You know that there wasn't actually a rush on the Mini Cooper dealership. It was simply that those cars have now been bumped up to a higher notch on your brain's Google search results. This is a bias. Now, biases have kept us safe for thousands of years. So a long time ago, we didn't need to watch a saber-toothed tiger eat one of our neighbors more than once before developing a very healthy bias against big kitties with sharp, pointy teeth. Just like today, we have very healthy biases against big metal boxes on wheels going very fast while we're trying to walk on long ribbons of concrete. Biases also help us order our world and function in it. So because of your experience, you have a bias that when you step into an elevator, that floor is actually going to be there. Now, there's been a focus for a really long time in diversity work on bias reduction and sort of identifying and rehabilitating biased people. But this isn't helpful. And not only that, it's impossible. Biases have served us for thousands of years. They still serve us today, and actually they provide us with an advantage. Here's what I mean. The more different you are from me, the higher the chance that you're picking up on a somewhat different 40 than I am. So the more diverse a group trying to solve a problem or make a decision, the larger the number of those millions of possibilities we're accessing together. Now, scientists have actually studied this, and I'm talking about mathematicians and economists, and they've found that a diverse group actually outperforms individuals as well as non-diverse groups when it comes to tasks like cognition, coordination, cooperation, prediction, and problem solving. In fact, that diverse group even outperforms a group of the best, and by a substantial margin, and even larger margin, the more difficult the problem. The third thing that I've learned about diversity is that everyone has good intentions, or almost everyone has good intentions, but good intentions aren't enough. Now, almost everyone that I've met thinks that diversity is a good idea. And I don't want to minimize or deny the fact that there are people without good intentions and the fact that we have over 1,000 active hate groups in the United States. But I believe that the bigger problem is that the majority of us well-intended people have biases. Well, we all have biases, but that because of those, we miss things and we don't even know it. A Vietnamese interpreter in a hospital once told me a story of a young couple that were new parents that were becoming frequent flyers in the urgent care in the hospital because the baby was having all these problems breathing. The doctors had asked all the right questions and tried everything and kind of were at a loss until one day the interpreter asked for permission to inquire with the family about their incense burning practices at home. Turns out that both of the parents came from large families, and so to celebrate the event of the baby's birth, they were burning a tremendous amount of incense in the home, up to twice a day. The parents agreed to move the incense burning altar outside, and the baby's breathing problems immediately went away. There's no way that that non-Vietnamese doctor, with all of his good intentions and years of training, could have known to ask that critical question that the interpreter did. Good intentions also aren't enough because it's often not our good intentions or our conscious beliefs that drive our behavior. It's our unconscious biases. There was another study in healthcare that looked at physicians prescribing a life-saving medication to white and African American patients who had experienced a heart attack. Now, they found pretty much no difference between the physicians in terms of their conscious beliefs and attitudes about race. But they found that the physicians that had more negative unconscious biases against African Americans were less likely to prescribe the African American patients that life-saving medication. Now, there's a happy ending to the story, which is that once made aware of their unconscious biases and their impact on the patients, those physicians were able to adjust their behavior and the disparity went away. Now, as a species, human beings are facing problems of unprecedented size, complexity, and urgency. We need access to everyone's brilliance to effectively and quickly solve the problems facing us. We need access to as many of those millions of possibilities as we can get. Diversity is necessary to our survival and our evolution as a species. We shouldn't do diversity because it's the right thing to do or it's what good people do. But it provides our species with an evolutionary advantage at a brain level. Diversity, equity, and inclusion lead to better results, whether those results are improved health care, better education, stronger communities, better laws and policies, and even higher profits, to the extent that the top 50 companies for diversity in the United States consistently outperform the stock market by 25 to 30%. Now, the research also shows that you don't get these better results just by putting a bunch of diverse people together. Those people also have to get along and communicate effectively. I believe that in the United States, and in New Mexico in particular, with all of our multiple layers of rich diversity, we have the potential to lead the way in how to do this. I believe the how boils down to 5 C's. Commitment, to taking others' points of view seriously, to treating all differences equally, and to diversity, but also inclusion and equity in power and decision-making. Curiosity about what we're missing because of our biases. Consciousness about what our actual behaviors are. They may not line up with our good intentions. Compassion for ourselves when we have negative impacts on others that we don't intend, and compassion for others when they have negative impacts on us, and courage. Courage to face and heal the guilt and shame, anger and blame, and then move forward together. And courage to take responsibility for each of our part of the problem. Because if you're not a part of the problem, you can't be a part of the solution.